What are we fighting for, brothers? We're fighting for a righteous world. 2 Peter 3:13. We're fighting for a world of total righteousness. We're fighting for a world where we're going to be exalted, where we're going to be lauded, where we're going to be praised as the people of the Most High, as the Israelites, as the elect of the nation of Israel. Think about that, man. The elect of the nation of Israel, part of the 144,000. Think about that. Huh? That alone should inspire you. There's even a song, man, oh, when the saints come marching in. We're those saints that's going to come marching in. Oh, I want to be in that number. We're in that number. We believe that according to faith. Come on, brothers.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
How about Shemel Shai? How about Shemel Shai? Barakatah Yahweh Shai. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shai.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutations to the whole fleck out there, pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful and the believers and listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. All right, and what I want to get into today, dealing with the book of Acts, the 6th chapter, continuing on, with the series in the book of Acts. Okay, and the theme of this, is separated to teach and wisdom that can't be resisted. And we get these two examples, from this chapter, So just want to go into it. Starting in the book of Acts, chapter 6, verse 1, it says, in those days, when the number of the disciples multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Now, when you read this, okay, and you would think that it was speaking about, another nation of people, okay, but when you go into the translations, okay, of this, all right, I'm getting the AMP, we used to go into this all the time, dealing with, the Hellenists. Now it says, and now about this time when the number of disciples was increasing, a complaint was made about the Hellenists, the Greek-speaking Jews. Okay, and you go into this term Hellenist. Okay, let's see if you load up. Yeah, ain't loading. It was loading earlier. But yeah, it says the Hellenists and the Greek speaking Jews against the native Hebrews because their widows were being overlooked in the daily serving of food. All right, so you had the Hellenists, all right, what they call the Grecians, which was Greek speaking Jews. They had came up in the way of the Greeks, but they was, converted, okay, and they was getting discriminated against by those that was other circumcision, that was raised up in the law, okay. So you had a dispute, dealing with, the daily, rationing of food. Okay. So this is, what came up to the apostles, the discrepancy, the discrimination against the Greek speaking Jews. Okay. But they were Israelites. Okay. So when you're going through the New Testament, you see Greeks. Okay. They're speaking of Israelites, man, because you have to understand the effect, okay, of Hellenization, during the time of the Greeks and the impact that it had, okay, on the Jews. It created, all right, a culture, okay, of Greek speaking Jews, okay, Israelites that were, cultivated in the way of the Greek, okay, but at the preaching of Yahushua, okay, those Grecians, those Hellenized Jews were converted back to righteousness, man. Okay. So let's matter of fact, let's pull this up real quick. So let's go here in the chat. Okay. So I asked the chat, it says, what would be the duties of a chief prince? Oh, Salaki. That's the wrong chat, Salaki. This was something else. Oh. Okay, this was Salaki. All right, so I asked the chat, it said, what effect did the Greek Empire have on the Jews? Did it create a social culture of Israelites that adopted the ways of the Greeks to assimilate into the Greek Empire? So it says, yes, Greek Hellenistic rule had a profound cultural impact on the Jews, and it did create a segment of Israelites who adopted Greek ways in order to assimilate. But the effect was divisive, not uniform, and it sparked one of the most important identity conflicts in Israelite history. Okay, and it says how Greek rule came to Israel. So we're gonna go into this history to understand how we got to the point of the New Testament. You see, Christians. We was taught in Christianity. Those that was of the Christian church. A lot of us were. But, we was taught in Christianity that when we seen the word Greek, it meant that of another nation. We were thinking the Edomites with togas on. Okay, that's the only thing we associated when we seen the word Greek, okay, in the New Testament, okay. But there's a lot of history that goes into how you had Israelites that conformed, okay, to the culture of the Greeks, all right, but they were still Israelites, okay. So the New Testament is still a book written to Israelites, okay, and these epistles written to all these different churches, Galatians, Ephesians, okay, Colossians, all the different books that we've, been going through as of late, all right, were Israelites that was affected, all right, their ancestors were highly affected by this history we're getting ready to go through, okay. It says how Greek rule came to Israel. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire, including Judea. After his death, his empire was divided and Judea came under Ptolemaic rule. Egypt first, then the Seleucid rule of Syria. So, and you can read about this in the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter. It goes into, all right, what they call the Syrian wars, all right, which was between two, okay, of the dynasties that will come from Alexander, the Ptolemaic dynasty and the Seleucid dynasty. Okay, the Seleucid dynasty being the king of the north, the Ptolemaic dynasty being the king of the south. Okay, and they will have a rivalry, and Judea was caught in the middle of it. Okay, but all in all, you had Greek culture being heavily pushed during this time, and under the solutions. Okay, when you had Antiochus Epiphanes, these things was forced by the sword. Hellenization was forced by the sword. Okay, as we always read in the book of Maccabees, the first chapter, it said this period is called the Hellenistic era. What Hellenization meant: Greek rulers did not usually force people to abandon their religion, but they strongly promoted Greek culture, included Greek language, which was Koine Greek, Greek education and philosophy, Greek political institutions, Greek sports and gymnasiums, Greek names and dress, loyalty to the king and the polis, all right, the city state model. Okay, so you didn't have always enforcement of Greek culture. Okay, but it was convenient if you was amongst the Greeks to adopt Greek culture. That's why those Jakes in First Maccabees say, it's been hard on us, since we left, the way of the Greeks. Okay, since we've, abandoned, all right, Greek culture, it's gotten harder. Okay, because it was convenient to be like the Greeks amongst the Greeks, man. When they was in power. And we're gonna keep going into it. It says adopting these ways brought social status, economic opportunity, and political power. Okay, just like Jake assimilate, all right, in America today. Okay, Jake got to assimilate to an Edomite. Okay, for economic opportunity, political power, and social status, man. Okay, so when able to climb the social ladder, okay, the economic ladder or political ladder, okay, you got to conform to the rulers that be. When the Persians was in power, well, you would have to assimilate to the way of the Persians to really excel. Okay, the Babylonians, you have to assimilate to the way of the Babylonians to excel. And this is why Jake always had, this is why idolatry was always a stumbling block with Jake, because not only, was it you was able to indulge in the flesh, okay, but it came with a network, dealing with social status, economic opportunity, and political power amongst the heathens, man. Okay, and there was also a thing that would snare Jake, with social status amongst the heathen. Okay, and it says, yes, many Jews adopted Greek culture to assimilate. A Hellenized Israelite elite emerged, especially in cities like Jerusalem. So you had an elite class, all right, that emerged during the time of Hellenization. Okay, so you had Greeks, that was well off because of their association with Greek culture. Okay, of them conforming to Greek culture. You see, selling out. You see, it says took Greek names, Jason instead of Joshua, built gymnasiums in Jerusalem, downplayed or reinterpreted Israelite law, and they would do that to conform to Greek culture. So they began to trim their way to seek love, as the scriptures say. It said participated in Greek sports, sometimes attempting to hide circumcision, value Greek philosophy and aesthetics. All right, it says sometimes attempting to hide circumcision, man. You had Jake even going to the furthest extent of trying to put their foreskin back on, man. All right, because the Greeks would run, the 100 meters, butt ass naked, man. They were tripping. Okay, the discus toss naked. The Greeks, man, turned Jake out. Okay, a lot of Jake got turned out by that, man. You see, it says some, all right, Israelite leaders believed Judaism could survive better by adapting to Greek civilization. So Jake was compromising, man. Okay, Jake was heavily compromised during this time. And these are Jakes that knew that they were Israelites. They were trying to keep the law and be Greeks. Okay? Conflicted as hell, man. Contradictory as hell, man. Oh, see? It said this created a hybrid identity. Okay? Israelite by ancestry, Greek by culture. Okay? Israelite by ancestry and Greek by culture. Okay? And it says strong resistance from traditional Jews. At the same time, many Jews, especially rural and priestly groups, strongly resisted Hellenization. They believed the Torah was non-negotiable, circumcision, Sabbath, and dietary laws were sacred. Greek customs threatened Israel's covenant with the Most High. This tension split the Israelite society into factions, Hellenizers versus traditionalists. Okay, so it was a lot of conflict there, and that's why we read in Acts. You had those of the circumcision; they were discriminating against those Greek-speaking Israelites, man. Okay, it was a lot of bad blood, a lot of tension. Like there was war. It was bloodshed about this, man. There wasn't no light disagreement. It was bloodshed about this situation, man. Dealing with those those Israelites that was Hellenized and those that stuck to the way, those traditionalists, okay, or Orthodox, okay. It says crisis under Antiochus, okay, the fifth, 2nd century BCE. It says the conflict reached a breaking point when Seleucid king Antiochus Epiphanes outlawed circumcision and Sabbath service, desecrated the temple, forced pagan sacrifices. This led to the Maccabean revolt. Okay, and you had Jake went to war to preserve the law, to preserve the way, to preserve the customs. Okay, and you had a dynasty that would emerge out of that. Jake has a little short kingdom for him, the Hasmonean dynasty. Okay, which was a spinoff of the Maccabean revolt. Okay, it said long-term effects of Greek influence even after resistance. Greek influence remained. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, was produced. Greek became the common language of Jews across the Mediterranean. Later, Israelite thinkers, Philo Alexander, blended Torah with Greek philosophy, man. Okay, so Greek bled over into Israelite customs, man. Okay, you had Jake just merging the both. And that's why the Apostle Paul was saying, don't give heed, to these fables, because they became intertwined with, some teachings of the Torah. You had certain fables, all right, certain myths, okay, that was intertwined with the Torah, man. While Paul said, don't give heed to those things. Okay, it says, but Israelite identity was strengthened. The revolt reinforced commitment to the law. New Jewish sects emerged: the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes. So they came out of the traditionalists. Okay, now the Pharisees, they was more orthodox, but the Sadducees, as we've been going over, them niggas, you know, they was Hellenized. They eventually became Hellenized. All right, and the Essenes, they was kind of off to the side, but they was real strict. Okay, in the law, almost, not almost, they went a little too far. They had certain things. We'll go into the Essenes, maybe I could look into it, but as I can remember, they was, they had over righteous, doctrine, but it was a response to Hellenization and trying to preserve the way. So you get it, but they were doing a little too much. All right. But it said Judaism became more self-conscious about resisting assimilation. Okay. So this is why when you read, as we were reading in the book, okay, of Acts, let's get back to it. Okay, so you get the book of Acts, chapter 6. Okay, and like I said, let's read this in the AMP again. The book of Acts, chapter 6, verse 1. Okay, in the AMP. It says, now about this time, when the number of the disciples were increasing, the church was growing, a complaint was made by the Hellenists, okay, the Greek-speaking Jews, against the native Hebrews because their widows were being overlooked in the daily serving of food. Okay, so this rivalry, this bad blood goes back generations, you know. But under Yahushua, these things, all right, were quelled. You know, Yahushua brought peace, okay, to both factions, man. Okay, those that were Hellenized, they came back to Yahushua, and those of the circumcision, they came to Yahushua. Yahushua was like their meeting point, okay, because we all needed forgiveness of sin, whether you was brought up under the law or whether you was brought up, okay, amongst the heathen. We still all needed mercy, okay, by the blood of Yahushua. And that was the common ground, okay? And that was Yahushua was a peacemaker between those two factions, you know, that will come under him, you know, that will believe in him through the preaching of the apostles, okay? That's why even, let's get this in Ephesians. Real quick in Ephesians, and we'll read down. So this is the book of Ephesians, chapter 2. In this book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 11, it says, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands. Okay? So these Gentiles, okay, were Israelites, were culturally, you know, they was assimilated to what the Greco-Roman way. Okay? So the circumcision referred to them as the uncircumcision. Okay? Because there was a major, you know, token, okay, of being under the law is being circumcised the 8th day, which in the Greco-Roman culture, there wasn't, you know, a thing. You had people, all right, most of, you know, the Greco-Roman culture was uncircumcised. It was a custom of Hebrews, you see? So that was an indicator, all right? So the circumcision will call them the uncircumcision, all right? But they was Israelites. It said that at the time, at that time you were without Hamashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel. Okay, the commonwealth, those inheritance, those promises. Okay, and why it says, and strangers from the covenants of promise, which were made to one lineage of people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, having no hope and without the Most High in the world. Okay, because as our people was into, you know, it was you know, generations of, you know, the Greco-Roman Empire. Well, you have generation after generation being born, okay, and cultivated in the Greco-Roman customs, okay. They're completely oblivious to the Most High and to the promises and to their history and who they are. Okay, they was becoming the no people, as the scriptures speak about. You see, they was becoming the no people among the heathen, man. You know, just as we became a no people. All right, we became black, Hispanic, you know, Mexican, whatever. That's a no people according to the Bible. The Bible doesn't reverence, all right, those identities for us, man. Okay, but through captivity and, you know, generations of being raised up, okay, under westernization, we was becoming the no people. But through Yahushua, we came back to who we were. Our pure minds were stirred up through the preaching, okay, which this word is going out in the spirit of Yahushua. It's Yahushua gathering his sheep. okay, from amongst the heathen. Same thing that was going on back then. Okay. It says, for he is our peace, who have made both one. Okay, because remember, it was a lot of bad blood, it was a lot of tension. Okay, between those Orthodox Jews, those traditionalists that kept the way, they went to war to keep the way. Okay, and those that were of the Hellenized, that was Hellenized, man. They looked at them as sellouts that they gave in, they was weak. They weren't willing to die for the law. Okay, so it was a lot of animosity. But through Yahweh Shai, okay, there was peace through belief in Yahweh Shai. You still had, some ill feelings, but these things were eventually smoothed out under Yahweh Shai. Okay, he said, for he is our peace. We have made both one and have broken down the middle wall of partition between us. Okay, so through Yahweh Shai, that wall, that barrier, the animosity between, all right, the Hellenized Jew, okay, and the Jew of the circumcision, okay, was diminished. Okay, it says, having abolished in the flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in the ordinances, for to make himself twain one new man, so making peace. And let's get this in the NLT. All right, and we go back to the book of Acts. Let's get this in the NLT verse. All right, it says, he did this by ending the system, all right, of law with his commandments and regulations, which he didn't end it, he fulfilled it. Okay, he just ended, the standard of being made righteous by that system. Okay, because we still keep the law to the best of our ability. All right, but the standard of being righteous, of being made right with the Most High, okay, by the law, that has ended through Yahweh Shai. Okay, it says he made peace between the Jews and the Gentiles. So the Jews didn't have the boast that they was keeping the law and they was good. Okay, and the Israelite foreigners, they wasn't condemned anymore about not keeping the whole law. Okay, so Yahweh Shai was that middle ground of peace, and where they both could come, all right, believe and grow in righteousness in Yahweh Shai. Okay, it says, by creating in himself one new people, okay, which is the same people, Israelites, from the two groups. Okay, you just had the Israelite foreigners and you had the native born, okay, of Judea, of the circumcision. Okay, so let's go back to the book of Acts. All right, it's the book of Acts, chapter 6, verse 2. It said, then the 12 called the multitude of the disciples unto them and said, it is not reason that we should leave the word of the Most High and serve tables. So the disciples like, look, it's not on us to serve tables and handle these little disputes, okay, about, daily food rationing. Okay, so they're finna delegate that authority, all right, to men of good reputation. Acts 6 and 3, wherefore, brethren, look ye out among you, it says, look ye out among you 7 men of honest report, full of the Holy Spirit and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. But we will give ourselves continue to prayer and to the ministry of the word. So they were separated to teach. Okay, their whole thing was to be separate so they can continue to be in the scriptures and teach. Okay, just as we've been called, to be separated to teach this word. That's why I said we're not here to throw community picnics and be in community outreach and go on all these podcasts. Nah, man, we here to teach, man. We tapped into teaching, man. We're watching and teaching. Okay, we don't have time to be caught up in the gimmick, shooting music videos, and we don't got time to do that, man. We're occupied in teaching and edification, man. Okay. Proverbs 18:1 said, through desire, a man having separated himself, seeketh and intermeddleth with all wisdom, man. So the Lord has raised up a remnant, okay? And amongst that remnant, he's raised up teachers and pastors, okay? Prophets, okay? For the sake of edification. You see? And this is what these men are to be dedicated to. Now, we all have, our personal life, okay? We all have, our personal obligations, okay? But one thing we all have to do is to prioritize, free time for this word, to make time for this word. According to our situation, it look different, for every brother, okay? And it's different requirements, okay, that the Lord has for different brothers. But all in all, we are to all prioritize this word, man. Because we've been separated to teach this word, man. This is why we're here. Okay, to edify the elect and prepare our people for the second coming. To be the forerunners of Yahushua, man. And that's a task within itself. That's why brothers that teach, they got two jobs by default. The job that they work in their day to day, okay, and teaching His word, that's two full-time jobs by default. You see? So someone that's really sincere don't have time to be tapped in to madness, man. Okay? This Sirach 38:24 said, the wisdom of a learned man cometh by opportunity of leisure, and he that have little business shall become wise. Okay? So we can't be occupied in folly and things that don't matter, in vanity. Okay? Or lesser matters, man. Okay? Now here's the debate you, Jakes, all year about the same thing. Nah, man, we got more pressing matters, man. Things are happening. Prophecy is unfolding, man. Okay, and the elect is being edified by sound doctrine, man, not by gimmicks. Okay, or a music video. Okay. So let's go here. Let's go to the next. And then we'll go back. Chapter. Sirach 39:1, it said, but he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High and is occupied in the meditation thereof will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecies. Okay? So we all have our office, man. Apostle Paul speaks about, how he has a dispensation to do this, man, which means he was given an office of stewardship. Okay, and this is no light thing. People make light, teaching His word. Our family never take it. Our family never take what we do serious for the most part. Okay. Even people of our own household, they're not going to take what we do as serious as it really is. Okay, but we gotta take it serious as teachers, man. And not get entangled and caught up in the things that don't matter, man. Because nobody knows the severity of what we're doing but us, man. Okay? This is Acts 6 and 3. It says, let's see. Start at 4 again. It says, but we will give ourselves continue to prayer and to the ministry of the word. And the saying pleased the whole multitude, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Holy Spirit, and Philip and Prochorus and Nicanor and Timon and Parmenes and Nicholas, and it says a proselyte of Antioch, whom they set before the apostles, and when they had prayed, they laid their hands on them, so they was anointed, for the office of, dealing with the distribution of food, overseeing and making sure, things were done, fair and just, okay, in the spirit of Yahushua, man. Verse 7 says, and the word of the Most High increased, and the number of disciples multiplied in Jerusalem greatly, man. So the word It's just flowing. You see, because that's why the disciples said, "Look, we got to teach the apostles. Like we got to teach, man. We can't get caught in the weeds of this thing, man. We here to teach. We here to edify. You know, and you just start seeing the church growing. All right, and that's what we seeing now, man. The church is growing, even if it's not a bunch of numbers. Was Esau tweaked the numbers and he hide the comment. So if it's ever, you feel like the comment isn't being read. A lot of times Esau be hiding the comments. There's a lot of comments we don't get. I know there's a lot of views and things we don't get, but we're not here for that. Okay. But we know the church is growing and we know the individuals in the church are growing. And that's why we're here. Okay. So Acts 6 and 8 it says, and Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. Okay, so the Lord granted Stephen the ability to do miracles, man. It had some niggas pop up, man. That's the theme I'm seeing is, every time the apostles or a believer do a miracle, is always some conniving, cutthroat, backwater nigga that pop up, man, and cause a ruckus, man. Jake is offended at the power of Yahushua, man. Jake is offended at Yahushua, in general, man. Okay, but the Lord, gives us, the ability to teach and to edify, man. Jake is offended because that's a form of power. Okay, and there's, the Lord gives brothers, okay, more power in these times we're coming into, because the Lord gonna turn the power up, and as things get more intense, the Lord gonna turn the power up. He gonna have to. How we gonna make it? You see, the Lord gonna turn the power up, man. In the times we coming into. You see, and it's gonna cause, believers to come in. Okay, it's gonna cause people to come in, and it's gonna cause, all right, niggas to be hating, man. I can see niggas calling the hotline. Here it is, your fellow Israelite got powers in. You see, niggas gonna be reporting it, calling it in. Okay, I can see that niggas are gonna be on the front line of helping persecute the prophets. Niggas that know that they're Israelites and niggas in the world, they're gonna be on the front line of persecuting prophets when Esau really pushes propaganda. Okay, it says, then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines. All right, it says in Cyrenians, Alexandrians, and of them of Cilicia in Asia, disputing with Stevens. Niggas want to argue. Okay, they see Stephen has the ability to do miracles. They know the doctrine. Okay, but what do niggas want to do? Argue. Just bypass all the miracles and the power that's being shown. A nigga want to argue, man. Niggas love to argue, man. Niggas love to argue, man. Niggas live is niggas that were just born to argue, man. To no end. They ain't even about being right. It's just the sake of just arguing. Okay. Acts 6 and 10 it says, and they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spake. Then they cut. It said they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spake. Okay, they couldn't deal with him. Okay, the wisdom was taking them down through there, man. Okay, so they couldn't deal in the spirit, so they go by other means. Just like Jake can never deal in the spirit. So what does Jake do? Oh, you're a peddler, you're a rapist. Because Jake doing it, and Jake really be wanting something to come of it. That's why Jake always revert back to that. Jake really be wanting, charges and investigations. If Jake would, man, Jake would have us falsely imprisoned, man. Okay, as you're gonna see. All right, what these guys, did, but showing you that, because Yahushua spoke of that too, man. These devils nobody on earth can deal with this wisdom, man. Okay, nobody on the planet Earth is able to stand in front of the wisdom of Yahweh Shem Shah, man. He's gonna make all right people look foolish, man. His wisdom makes people look foolish and they get cut and they get hurt. Okay, so let's go here to the book of Luke, chapter 22. Chapter 21, verse 12. It says, "But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake." Okay, and that's coming. Brothers gonna be getting snatched up. It's not gonna be the case for every brother, but brothers gonna be getting snatched. Okay, and it shall turn to you for a testimony. So we've been warned of these things. There's no circumstance that we're going to find ourselves in going into the time of tribulation, the time of us being tried, all right, that we haven't read about over and over again. So when we find ourselves in these circumstances, we know to have faith. That's a faith booster in itself because we've been told these things, man, it's in us. Okay. Verse 14 says, "Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what ye shall answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist," man. The Lord's going to do that, man. We got to have faith in that, man. When you get in these situations, they don't even meditate. If they say this, I'm going to say this. You got your line of this is my starting precept. Nah, man. Don't even meditate, man. Just trust in the Lord, and He gonna give us wisdom if that's our lot to be brought before. All right, these devils for a testimony, man. He gonna give us a wisdom, okay, and it's gonna confound them. They gonna be confounded, man. Okay, let's go here. You see, the wisdom that we have it's on another level, man. It's not a thing of boasting. It's just what it is. It's the wisdom of the Most High. We just vessels. Okay, we didn't conjure up this wisdom. It's the wisdom of the Most High, man. It's way above the wisdom of this world, man. All right, which Esau has paraded around the earth as something great. Okay, 1 Corinthians 1:19. It says, "For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and bring to nothing the understanding, okay, of the prudent. Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this world? Have not the Most High made foolish the wisdom of this world, man?" And you look at and the longer, we're in this truth, man. The less impressed we should be with Esau and everything that the devil got going on, man. Because as we increase in wisdom on the right hand side, man, the left hand should seem more foolish and stupid, man. The way this man runs the earth, okay, the new world order he's trying to bring in, these doctrines and philosophy that this, that he's, these great philosophers that he, these great men that he praised in his society and what they believe, and it's stupid, man. Transhumanism and okay, all these dumbass philosophies. Okay, as we grow in wisdom, this is foolish, man. You step back and look at society, how the earth is being ran. It's absolutely foolishness, man. And that's the wisdom of Yahweh by Shema Shai that's making this place out to be foolish, man. Okay? So let's go back to the book of Acts, chapter 6. All right. The book of Acts, chapter 6, verse 10, it said, they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spake. Then they suborned men which said, "We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and against the Most High." Okay, so now they just got to make up allegations. They got to make things up. They just got to lie. Okay, and they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes and came upon him and caught him and brought him to council and set up false witnesses which said, "This man ceaseth not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and law." Okay, so the same thing they did to Yahushua. Okay, this is what Yahushua was warning the disciples, man. Look, they gonna do y'all like they do me. Okay? When they came and got Yahushua, they had false witnesses. Okay? I believe that's in the book. Let me see if I can find this in Luke. Yeah, let's go ahead. Matthew 26 and 16. It says, this is Matthew 26 and 59. It says, now the chief priests and the elders and the council sought false witness against Yahushua to put him to death, but found none. Yeah, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. And the last came 2 false witnesses. And they said, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of the Most High and build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said unto him, answer thou nothing. What is it which these witness against thee? Okay, so same thing. Yahushua, false witnesses, these made up accusations and cases, and so you see Stephen in the book of Acts going through the same thing, but that's part of that cup. That's why we often go over that cup. We got to drink of that cup. I say, Yahushua was betrayed by somebody close to him, Judas. Okay, that can happen. That's a possibility. Okay, there's a chance we have to drink of that cup. Well, ain't a chance we will have to drink of that cup. Now, what's in that cup, all right, you see, is yet to be known as far as before it's all said and done, because we're drinking the cup now. We're going through the same things that Yahushua went through. Okay, not as severe, but the same things. Okay, and what's to come, what's in the rest of that cup, hey, yet to see. Okay, as we get into the thick of this thing, man. Okay, and it says, verse 13, back in Acts 6 and 13, says, instead of false witnesses which said, this man ceases not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law. For we have heard him say that this Yahushua Nazareth shall destroy this place and shall change the customs which Moses delivered us, man. And that's a lie. Yahushua never, all right, and that was never part of the doctrine that Yahushua spoke about destroying the law or doing away with the law. He just established the grace, okay, to where the standard of the law doesn't put us in good standards with the Father. The standard of keeping the whole law, that's what Yahushua did away with, was the standard of keeping the law to be saved, the standard of keeping the law to be in good standings with the Heavenly Father, because both sides was falling short. The circumcision, they wasn't in good standing, they was in captivity. So the law wasn't working in their favor neither, as far as being justified. Now the law is a beautiful thing. Applying the law is wisdom. Okay, and we apply as much of the law as we can in these circumstances, man. Okay, that's a very wise way to live. Okay, but when you're talking about being justified by the law, that's a whole nother story, man. Okay, and even Jacob, the circumcision, was in captivity, so the law wasn't working, all right, for them. So Yahushua came, all right, and granted a grace period to where the law wasn't abolished, okay, but being justified by the standard of the law, that was abolished, man. Okay, and in the kingdom, the laws are going to be within us. Okay, so Yahushua wasn't contradicting the law of Moses. He just added grace to the law of Moses. All right, and that grace is carrying us into the new covenant when we're going to be perfected, and the laws are going to be in us forever, man. Okay, it says, and all that sat in the council looking steadfastly on him, saw his face as it had been the face of an angel. You know, the Most High put a spirit on Stephen, man. And we get to chapter 7, we're gonna see why. But the Most High put Yahweh Bashim Shai put a heavy spirit on Stephen, man. You know, because he finna get the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Shai finna get active, man. Okay, and see the spirit finna intensify. See, in that moment, you know, when Stephen was in the jam, the Lord put a spirit on him, a heavy spirit on him in that moment. So we got to understand in the moments that we coming into, we not walking around with the spirit we're gonna have on us when it's time for us. You know, if it's certain of us when it's time for us to get snatched up and come before leaders. You know, for some of us, you know, if we have to be beheaded, okay, the spirit we need to endure that. We're not walking around with that spirit 24/7, but in that moment we're gonna have that spirit. Okay, and we gotta believe that, man. Okay, so Ecclesiastes 8:1 says, "Who is the wise man, and who knoweth the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom maketh his face to shine, and the boldness of his face shall be changed." Okay, so this wisdom, you know, is making our face to shine. Okay, and in that moment, you know, Stephen was endowed with a lot of wisdom because he finna go in chapter 7. Okay, and he was endowed with that wisdom, you know, for that moment, man. Okay, but as we grow in this thing, man, this wisdom is literally causing, you know, our countenance to shine. Okay, that's why, you know, you get certain looks when you're out and about. Okay, because of this wisdom, man. You see, it's not a thing of boasting; it's a thing of responsibility. All right, even when you go here to Proverbs 4. Look at that. All right, so let's go to Proverbs 4:16. No, 18, get to the point. In Proverbs 4:18 said, "But the path of the just is as the shining light, that shining more and more until the perfect day." Okay, and the elect are the just, you know, the hopeful elect are the just. Okay, and as we've, you know, been placed on the path of righteousness, you know, as we're learning and growing in wisdom and understanding, you know, in conduct, you know, integrity, okay, it's causing us to shine more, man. You know, and it's gonna keep shining more and more into the perfect day, into the day that we're perfected, that we're changed, man. You know, so yeah, that was a point. Just want to get into that, Lord will, you brothers. All right, and you sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem Kakodash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples for each other brothers. And peace and blessings, salutation, and hopefully, Shalom.